Hey guys, it's Maxine and thank you so much for watching. So today's video, I'm going to be doing a balayage on my client. This is her previous balayage all grown out. We haven't done it in a while, but we're going to be freshening up her balayage, and this client actually wants to go darker. So even though we're going darker, we're going to be definitely bringing her balayage back up to the roots a bit more, and then, freshening up the roots, and then we're going to be toning it to a darker color. We're going for like a kind of an ashier caramel color, so we definitely want it to be like deeper and darker, more of a caramel color. So I'm going to be adding like golds in, but we're definitely going to still go for the ashy colors. But yeah, throughout the process, I always go over all the formulas that I use and I'll explain everything. But yeah, so definitely don't forget to subscribe to my channel, especially if you want to see more color videos in the future. And follow me on Instagram. It's at Maxine Glynn. I leave that linked in the description because I always write out all of my formulas like in the written out form on my Instagram. So definitely check out my Instagram for all of the written out formulas. But yeah, so like I said, we're going to be doing a fresh balayage on my client, darkening everything though, and keeping everything nice and pretty and caramel. And then we're going to be doing like a little bit of a chop, like freshening up her ends and cutting some off and stuff like that. Also, don't forget to hit the bell for post notifications so that you're always notified every time I upload a new video. And leave any comments or questions you have in the comment section, and I'll definitely try to answer as many as possible. But alright guys, if you want to see me do this caramel balayage, then definitely keep watching. So I'm starting off by taking Matrix Light Master Lightener, and I'm adding that into the bowl, and I'm going to be mixing that with 25 volume. So I'm going to be using 20 and 30 volume equal parts, and with the lightener. And I really like to keep like a more medium consistency. I definitely don't like if the lightener is too runny, or I don't like if it's too thick. So definitely more of like a medium consistency is like my favorite to work with. But yeah, so that's for the lightener. And so now I'm just starting off with making sure that we're parting in the right area, and I always ask like where they part their hair. And for this client, she always parts on the side here, so I'm just straightening out her side part. And I'm going to be taking a section, like I'm taking a big section from the crown to the back of her ear, and I'm just clipping the sides out of the way. And I'm starting off my client's balayage at the nape of the head, so I take down a section, maybe about a nice full inch section worth, and then I kind of split that in half, so I'm taking about a half-inch section. I want it to be thick enough so that the lightener can lay on the slice nice as I'm feathering this up, but still thin enough that everything gets saturated nice and good, and then like it lifts even nicer when it's fully saturated. You have more control with the lift. So definitely with the dark hair, especially because we want to lighten her as light as possible, because we want this to come out kind of ashy. Even though we want it to be caramel and we're darkening it, we definitely still want to lighten this past any warm tones. So the thinner the section, the more control you have on lifting to a nicer color past all those brassy tones. But so I take that slice of hair and then I paint like halfway down the slice, and I get that nice and saturated so that I can just kind of get that out of the way. I like to saturate the ends first. That's just how I like to do it. I wear gloves obviously because I like get it all over my hands and stuff like that, but I like to saturate the ends first, and then I'm just going ahead and painting the V shape. I don't really worry about feathering it and blending it yet, but I just go ahead and I paint the V shape, and then after I get the shape painted onto the slice, I'll go back in and start back combing up with my color brush and feathering it. And I always lift the slice up and check the underneath, and I always feather out the underneath. Even though it might sometimes look feathered out, you always want to go ahead and never forget that, because if you forget that step, then it's going to come out kind of blotchy. Most of the time when I lift up the slice, it looks like, I don't know, like a little harsh, so I definitely want to blend it. But sometimes, even if it looks blended, I'll still blend it just in case, And then I put a foil down and I'll stick the ends to the foil, and then I'll sandwich over a clean foil, and then I'm on to the next section. But as I'm going up higher on the head, the sections get wider. So you know how I did like one foil going down? like with the nape. Well, as we get to a wider section in the head, I have to start splitting this into two. So then I'll do two slices next to each other, and I'll go back to the one section like as we get to the crown. But yeah, I'm just painting every single slice the exact same way. I'm saturating the ends halfway down the strand, and then I'm just not worrying about feathering right away. I'm literally just putting the lightener in the V shape on the slice. I just found that this is the easier way for me to do it. Like, I get to the point, kind of, you know what I mean? Because if you just start worrying about blending this out from the start, you're going to end up taking a long time to do a balayage. So I just like to paint the V and then go back in and worry about feathering. But like I said, then I'll lay the slice into a foil, and then I'll wipe off my hands, and then I'll sandwich a clean foil over the top so that lightener is not getting all over the hair, you know? Because then I can just go ahead and section out my next piece, and I won't have lightener on my hands because I'll have already wiped it off. I don't always show me wiping off my hands, but it's in there, I promise. It's definitely a better view from this side, so that's why I like to show it. And you can see right now it's a little bit easier to see what I mean when I say I just paint the V shape, and then I go back in and blend everything out like I'm doing right now, kind of backcombing with the brush. But I definitely like to leave this dark void in the middle of the V, because keeping enough dimension in the hair is going to really help the highlights pop. If I was to over highlight each of these balayage slices, the highlights won't really pop in that type of way. Like, it'll pop, like they'll show obviously, but you want like this specific technique to like show that dimension, because I just feel like that always looks really pretty. So definitely keeping enough dark, and not to like over lighten or over highlight, like highlighting, like getting highlight happy or something like that, because if you take too much of the dimension away, you're gonna stop seeing like such a nice pop of color when it comes to like the lighter color. And obviously, like, we're not doing a blonde balayage, but even still, when you're balayaging somebody who wants darker hair, like a darker balayage, which is exactly what I'm doing today, like a caramel, we're actually going lighter just to go darker again. But that's what I mean, like I want to get rid of all the brass and stuff, and we want to bring that like darker color back up to the roots. But yeah, like keeping enough dimension in the hair helps those lighter pieces pop a little bit. Like, I could have just taken the darker toner that I'm going to be doing later, and I could have just put that all over her ends, and it would have toned the ends like perfect, you know. But none of that color would have showed up in her root area, because her root area is going to be darker than the color that I'm going to be toning it with, and I'm going to show you later. So yeah, so like I'm lightening this root area so that the toner will show in those areas. Because like I said, if I would have just put that dark color on her hair right now, the ends would have been like a perfect color, but you wouldn't have seen any of that in the middle part. It would have all been just like her regular natural color, you know. And we wanted the dark color to be throughout the whole thing, not just the ends. So that's why I suggested to my client, even though you want to go darker, I think it's a good idea for us to do a balayage still and bring up this blonde, bring up the lighter pieces high up to your roots again, around your face and everything, and then we'll deepen everything back down with the glaze and everything like that, so that you can still see like that pretty caramel color like around your face frame and things like that. So Yeah, so even though we're adding in the highlights in the V section, like I said, we definitely still want to keep enough of the dark so that you can really see like those light pieces pop. But also all that dimension in between these slices, like I left out about a 1/2 inch of hair in between each, balayage slices, because that's going to keep the dimension in the hair also, which is also going to help encourage this to grow out really, really nice. Like, she's in college and I don't see her like all year. Like, I'll see her maybe 2 or 3 times a year. So, her hair can just continue to grow out and it doesn't have to like look all crazy, you know what I mean? Like in between her being able to get into the salon and stuff like that. So keeping the dimension in between the balayage slices really helps this grow out nice, and as it grows out it just looks nice and natural and stuff like that. So it's good for those clients that really are coming in like every 6 months or something like that, you know what I mean? But really any type of balayage service is perfect for those type of clients that like want to do their hair but they don't want like the tons of maintenance and stuff like that. So yeah, it's like balayage is perfect to suggest to those clients that don't want to have roots every like 6 weeks, you know what I mean? So most of the world now doesn't want roots every 6 weeks. So yeah, balayage is definitely something to talk your clients into if they're just getting like regular highlights at the moment and stuff like that. But regular highlights, it could be really good too, maybe sometimes shadow rooting, like a regular highlight, adding like that darker shadow root in will even encourage it to grow out really nice, even though they're just doing a regular highlight. After I'm done with the slice, I'll lay it into a foil and kind of stick the ends to the foil. And this is where I'll wipe off my hands. I don't always show it, like I said, but I'll wipe off my hands right now. And then I'm going to take a clean foil with my clean hands and sandwich the top foil over. And it sticks really well most of the time, but sometimes I'll fold the sides in and things like that. If you really don't want to worry about your foil slipping out and stuff, it's probably a good idea to sandwich them and then fold them. But if you feel like not really worried about it sliding out, then just layering it over the top like I just did is totally fine. And now I'm at the crown. So this is what I'm talking about, how I only need the one slice going back, and painting this the exact same way from the halfway down, saturating the ends as good as I can. And then with long hair, I'll like to fold up the ends in my hand so that they're not just kind of flopping all over the place. So the ends of the hair I'll fold into my hands after I saturate it. And yeah, I'm just painting the regular V like I've been doing on every slice. and blending this out and laying it into a foil and just letting this continue to process as I go over and start painting the side of the head. But just to kind of point out, like, I don't have to really time the back anymore because I got it all down to like a nice flow and everything. But if you're just starting out, like if you're in cosmetology school or if you're just like a beginner with balayage, it's definitely a good idea to, like, at this point when you're done applying the whole back section, to set a timer, set like a 20-minute timer or something like that, just to kind of remind you to check the back of it, and you'll also have a nice idea of how long it'll sit on each section. So like when I first started, I would set timers. I'll set one timer for the back, and then you at least have an idea, you know what I mean, of the timing, so that you don't over process it or under process it. You can kind of like really understand how long each section is sitting on. And then when you're done with the one side of the head, you set another timer, and then, you know what I mean. So like now, like I said, like when I'm all done with it, I kind of know how long it took me to apply the color and how long it's been sitting, and then I might just let it sit on for a certain amount of time. Like I've been doing this for a while now. But if you're just starting out, definitely set a timer when you're done with the back section. It'll just make your life so much easier, and you won't have to worry about like, oh, how long has it been sitting on and stuff like that, you know. So just a little tip. So I went ahead and I already foiled the whole left side of the hair, and I'm just showing the right side because it's a better view of the camera. But I'm basically just taking a slice at around her ear, like right above her ear, and I pulled out a lot of that hairline and I'm adding that into this slice. So, you know, I'm just kind of taking the whole front of the hairline and kind of just including that in the slice and painting this the exact same way. But when it comes to like the very front with the face frame and the hairline, definitely I like to like make sure it's all saturated really good. So I'll saturate the same way, the top and the underneath, but also like towards the front of where the hairline is. It also helps that to look very nice and naturally lightened by the sun and stuff, because in the summertime when you're like sitting in the sun for a long time, your hairline is like a lot smaller and thinner of strands, so they tend to lighten up a lot easier by the sun and stuff. And also if you lighten this front hairline area, when the client pulls their hair back, it's not gonna seem stripy or anything like that. It's gonna look very nice and naturally lightened, and it's just gonna make everything so much more seamless. So I always like to like paint out this very front area kind of like a triangle, so like the top, bottom, and front, just so that it looks nice and natural. But even though it's a nice and natural way to like paint the lightener and stuff, it's still like if you do a thick enough piece, you can still make this look really bold. And I always like think it's a better idea to go a little bit bolder with the face frame. Do the toner or the color melt or the glaze. That's like kind of all the same thing. Whenever you go and like tone it later, it definitely softens that bold face frame. So I kind of like to go a little bit bolder on the face frame, even if they do want it more natural. And then like, of course, if they want like a color block bang or something way bolder, like that's different. Like you're going so bold that there's really no kind of turning this into a natural thing, you know. But even if you want it to be natural, it's okay to go a little bit bolder on the face frame and like a little bit stripy, because the color melt or the toner is going to kind of erase a lot of that anyway. So yeah, but definitely painting the front face frame area just makes this lighten so nice and natural. So the next section I'm taking is by the temple area. So I always do my first slice on the side above the ear and my next slice on the side near the temple. And then, like I said, I leave that slice of just natural hair in between a lot, because I just feel like keeping more dimension in will help this grow out so much nicer. But yeah, my next slice is definitely near the temple. I just kind of like, when it comes to the face frame, I kind of like to hit the points in the front that are definitely going to be naturally lightened by the sun. So definitely the face frame, you don't want to like lighten the entire thing unless they're a blonde base already, because then it might come out too blocky for a face frame. But if they're dark like this, you still want to skip a little bit of hair in between each slice. But there's certain points I feel like that would be naturally lightened by the sun, and that's like very on the top, like where the part is, and then like the temple and things like that. So everything else, like you'll kind of leave that little piece of dark hair out in the middle, unless, like I said, they have a natural blonde base, if they're naturally blonde, then it would make more sense for you to really not skip any hair in the hairline, because blondes tend to naturally lighten by the sun so much easier than dark people, like dark haired clients. So with a blonde client, you might not really want to skip much hair in between, but a dark haired client, you definitely want to skip hair, but also you want to lighten those points that would naturally be lightened. And I just, in my opinion, think it's like the temple area, maybe by like right near the ear, and then of course the entire part, so wherever they part their hair, and then that's where I'm going to be heading next. So like the part is next, and maybe one slice underneath the part, which would be like right where the eyebrow is. So those are like the points that I kind of hit. So right above the ear, the temple, right above the eyebrow, and then wherever they part their hair. And of course it changes depending on the client and where they part their hair, but you can kind of sense that for if they do a side part or a middle part. But those are basically like the points that I'll try to hit for like when it comes to a face frame. But it's super important. Like this face frame for clients is what we call like the money piece. So that's definitely super important to like make sure that this is nice and lightened and blended out nice, because this is the part of their hair that they see. They see like the front and where they part their hair. This is like the first part they see in the mirror and stuff. So a nice face frame goes a long way when it comes to balayage. So definitely, you know, take a little bit extra time blending these pieces out. And like, even though you're going to blend it also with the toner, I really like to make sure that everything's nice and blended, even with the lightener too, because even though it takes a little bit of extra time to like make sure it's all blended out nice, you know, later on, like let's say in a couple of weeks, the client will go home and they'll use their color treated shampoo and everything's great, you know, but then eventually their color and their glaze will kind of fade a little, and you're left with what's underneath the glaze, you know. So that's what that's what the client is left with, like the lightened hair. So I just feel like feathering and blending with the lightener is a lot of times just as important as blending and feathering with the glaze, because you're gonna not have to hide anything, you know. Like eventually when the glaze wears off, they're still left with something super seamless. So yeah, I think it's like important, especially on the top pieces, but I do it everywhere, you know. I'm just like a perfectionist like that. But definitely in the front and on the top, like blend out really good, because that's just going to be revealed in a handful of weeks, like if they don't get back to you right away, you know what I mean? So yeah, take a little bit extra time and blend out the top, the front, the underneath. Yeah, it's going to be worth it in the end. So I'm working on the last pieces of the balayage right now, and then I'm going to be popping my client under the dryer right behind us in this video, and that's where I'm going to be adding like heat in to help this lighten past those like brassier tones. So heat with lightener is kind of controversial in the hair world, so I do like to point out that I think it should be used with caution. So just like if you're a beginner and stuff like that, I maybe don't use heat at first, but if you do use it with super amount of caution. Because what the heat does is, I think it's like a necessary tool to be able to like lift the clients to a desired color and stuff like that. So I definitely think it's important to use heat like at times, but yeah, like at the same time, it's definitely like adding strength to the color. So that's what the heat does, is it lifts the cuticle in the hair. It like lifts it open, and then it makes the color work stronger. So it's definitely going to be a little bit harsher on the hair to use heat. So yeah, like you definitely want to make sure that your client's hair is strong enough to be able to take heat, and like you definitely don't want to play around with heat. So it's definitely used for caution, like use caution with it. Maybe if you're just starting out, don't use it, or if you do want to use heat to like bump your client to a better desired color, maybe check it after like 5 minutes, stuff like that. But whenever I'm working on a client, I always like to determine how strong their hair is, and are they strong all over that strand, because sometimes if you're working with somebody like my client right now that's been previously lightened, the ends might not really be that strong, but that middle part might be super strong. So it depends. Like if I check on the back and the ends are already done processed, they're a light blonde already, but the middle part isn't, like I might go in the foil, I might open the foil and kind of wipe with like water and a towel, wipe the lightener off of those tips really quick, and then pop her under heat. So like that's what I mean. Like you definitely have to be very like detailed, like I don't even know, like you have to be very specific when it comes to heat, and just be careful. But I definitely think it's a necessary tool to use bump a client past super brassy tones. So I definitely used it. I popped my client under heat for like 10-15 minutes, and this is the result of what the back looks like after being under heat for like 10-15 minutes. So you can see it's still warm tones, but a lot of clients won't lift past these colors. So you definitely want to take that into consideration too. Not every client's going to lift to a pale yellow. So you don't want to over process somebody's hair just because it's not past certain tones. So you just want to pass the certain tones that are definitely going to be like the brassy tones that are going to be showing up underneath the like color, you know what I mean? So we were going to a darker color anyway. I knew I could use darker levels in the color melt and stuff, so I didn't have to, you know, push this past too warm of a color. So yeah, it's okay that it's like gold basically, you know what I mean? But yeah, so then I rinsed off the back and I popped her back under the heat. And as she's processing, this is when I'm mixing up her color melt right now. And you can see this is a really messy, sloppy, quick little thing that I wrote out because I didn't want to forget what I, you know, formulated. And so I'm going to write this way neater in my color book later. But yeah, that's what I used for her color melt. I'm also adding Olaplex into both of these formulas. But I basically, for her color melt, I mixed up two formulas. There's one which is darker and one which is lighter. So the formula for the roots, which is the darker one, is Matrix Color Sync, which is a demi-permanent. And I mixed up 1.5 ounces of 5N, which is neutral, because I wanted this to pull pretty dark, like her root color, which is going to help with that blend. But I also added in 1/4 ounce of HCG, which is a copper gold, because we're putting such a dark color over her, like, freshly lightened hair, and I don't want this to turn like any weird greenish tone, so that little bit of copper is just going to help this not turn any weird color. So just 1/4 ounce of the HCG is perfect. It's not going to show up in the color, but it's just kind of, you know, going to help prevent this turning to like a weird color. And I also added in 1/2 ounce of 5G, which is gold. And in the formula, I wrote down 1/4 ounce of 4G and 1/4 ounce of 6G. And those two together make 1/2 ounce of 5G because we don't carry like 5G. I don't know if Matrix even has 5G, but you know, we only carry 4 and 6. So I'll put the two together and basically makes a 5. But that's why I add the little pinch of copper gold into the formula, because basically the whole root formula is a level 5 and I like to level up a little bit. So my intention with her root color was for this to be processing and come out on the roots a little bit closer to a level 4. So I used a level 5 because I wanted to pull closer to level 4. And yeah, we still want this to be caramel, so I added the gold in, and the root color, it's dark enough. That's why I didn't really go ashy, even though we wanted this to turn out ashy on the ends. I didn't really put an ash on the root because we're going dark enough. And like, it's just going to cover any of this warmth anyway because of how dark the level is. So I didn't necessarily need to go in with an ashy tone on the roots because the pigment itself is dark enough to cover any of this warmth. But on the ends, you'll see I added in an end formula which has some violet in it. Okay, I mixed a lot of stuff for the ends formula, but that's because I'm trying to make a level 7. I want to put a level 7 on her ends because I want it to process closer to a level 6. And I want the ends to come out closer to like that light brown color. So I used a level 7. And I think that's hugely important to level up because her, like my client's color and her ends are super porous because obviously we lightened them, and just any type of color on any type of hair on the ends are usually a little bit more porous, especially if you lighten them. So I like to level up a little bit. If I would have used a level 6 on her hair, it would have probably came out too dark and we wouldn't have really seen the tone that much. So to play it safe, I like to level up a little bit. But I mixed Matrix Color Sync again for the ends, and that's a demi-permanent. Color Sync is always a demi-permanent, but I get a lot of questions if it's demi or not. So I'm trying to like remember to point out that it is demi. But like I said, I used like a level 7. So I did 3/4 of 6G, which is gold, because I want that caramel. And I also did 3/4 of 8V, which is violet, because I want to cancel any of this yellow or leftover orange gold tones. So violet is going to cancel yellow, and it's just going to minimize the gold. So it's not going to fully get rid of the gold, because in order to get rid of gold, you need blue, not violet. So like, because gold is closer to orange, that's why you would need the blue. But in this case, we don't want to get rid of all of the warmth because we want that caramel. So I don't want to get rid of the gold, really. I just want to add that violet in to cancel out the yellow and just kind of minimize the warmth of the gold that's left over. And that's going to give us like that really pretty, like kind of ashy caramel tone. So that basically made like 1.5 ounces, because that's 3/4 and 3/4 is 1.5 ounces of like a level 7 gold violet. That's the type of thing. Except the gold and the violet is equal to each other in this case, because I used like the pure tone. It's hard to explain, but if you were to just pull a color off of the shelf that's, let's say, already formulated, like some color lines have a previous like formulation already. So some color lines have 8GV, and you pull it out of the box, it's called 8GV, gold violet. But whenever that happens, it's like the gold is the letter that's first, which means there's more gold in that formula than violet. And if it's a VG, then it would be more violet. So it wouldn't be like equal. It would be like whatever like letter is first, it would be more of that tone in that like pre-pigmented color. I know it's like kind of hard to explain, but in this case, since I didn't, I made my own formula, it's not like weaker one or the other. The gold and the violet are very equal to each other. So there's just as much violet as there is gold. And so for the ends formula, I also added in 1/4 of 6N, which is neutral, and 1/4 of 8N, which is neutral. So that makes 1/2 ounce of 7N neutral. Because the neutral tones always come out really ashy when you're putting them over like a porous hair. So yeah, but it also comes out like that sandy color, which tends to look ashier, but it just adds to the whole like ashy tone. In my opinion, it always like kind of, it beiges things out, like it makes things a bit more beigey. But when you're going into like the darker tones, you don't really see the beiginess or the sandiness. It just kind of helps. It helps the hair become ashier without actually adding an ash color. So I know that that's kind of like confusing, but the violet in this case on the ends is the only thing that's actually an ash color. But the neutral is just, I'm adding the neutral in so that it kind of encourages it to be a little bit ashier, so that the caramel doesn't come out like too warm. But yeah, so anyway, I left the toner and the whole color melt on for about 5 minutes, and I apply that on damp hair, but I'll show you guys in a second. So I combed her hair out, detangled it, and now I'm putting the darker like root formula on, just the roots, about like 1/2 inch to 1 inch. She didn't really want this to be like too close to her roots anyway, so I'm kind of dragging it down about 1 inch in the front, like 1/2 inch to 1 inch. And yeah, as I'm working with it, it kind of drags itself down farther anyway. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and put the roots formula, which is the darker one, on all of the roots like I would like a single process. And then I'm going to put the color that I mixed up for the ends, I'll put it on the ends, and then I'll mix those two colors together. And I'll speed up this part just so that it's not so boring to watch. But yeah, I'm going to put like a foil on the very top of her head, just to prevent this from like bleeding onto spots that I didn't want the dark color to be on. So I just put like one foil on the top of her head, just, to help kind of keep everything nice and neat. And once I'm done applying all the roots, I just nice and carefully flip all those pieces back over. Like I said, I don't want this dark root color to touch any of her ends, so I'm just being very careful about it. And then I'm just going to start working on the roots for the other side, and I'll show you guys how I put the formula on the ends. And before I go in and put the formula on the ends, I just take like the wider tooth part of my comb and I carefully comb out this line a little bit. I don't like go all the way to the ends with the combing. I just kind of, feather out that line of demarcation a little bit. It really just helps with the blending. So yeah, quick little comb, and now I'm going to go in with the color on the ends. And now I just put that foil back on the head just to kind of make sure that all of the color on the end stays nice and neat. And when I flip it over, it doesn't actually touch that dark root color. So it just kind of helps act as like a barrier. But yeah, I'm going to put this ends formula on all over the ends, and I kind of want the two colors to mix together on the slice of hair. So I'll put the formula on the ends first and I'll work it through and then kind of, let them melt together. So that's basically like the color melt. And yeah, it ends up coming out really good. And there's two colors, so like the root and the ends, you know how they're like different levels in the formula, but when they melt together and they kind of mix together on the strand, they make that like in between formula. So it just helps it come out nice and seamless and everything. And I'm going to let this all process for about 5 minutes, open air. And yeah, I don't want it to get too dark. That's why I'm only letting it sit on for 5 minutes. So this is what it looks like after 5 minutes of processing. You can tell it definitely darkened a lot. It's not yellowy anymore. And once we, wash this and dry it, it's going to lighten up, because whenever it's wet with water and color and all that, it definitely looks darker than it's going to end up being. But that's why, like I said, I only let it sit on for 5 minutes so that it definitely doesn't get too dark, and it gives us a little bit more control to make sure. But, sometimes I do this, like I'll check it with a towel. You just take a towel and you kind of wipe the color off a little, and you can really see like what the actual color is going to be like before you go ahead and wash it all off. But I liked how the color looked, and I'm glad it wasn't getting too dark. But then I'm going to wash it and condition it and take her back to my station and style it and everything. After doing like a balayage and a color melt, it takes a while, so I really can't wait to see the results. So I love to just go right in and like start blow drying the very front and the top first. That way my client can see the color, I can see the color right off the bat, like, get the grand reveal out of the way and everything. And yeah, we end up loving this color. And I also like to show my client that you can wear your hair straight or curly. It doesn't really matter. It's definitely going to blend really nice. And I was like trying to show her that how the brown is, a lot closer to the roots because we did the balayage, that it would have just ended up being on the ends. So we're definitely glad that we went ahead and lightened up the rest of it and brought that, lighter brown color kind of up higher on the head. Because if we wouldn't have done the balayage, those really pretty like lighter tones, even though it's super dark, like the lighter tones would have only showed on the tips of the hair. But yeah, I like to just kind of show her that it's showing up everywhere, and yeah, so it's good that we did the balayage, and it kind of helps this last longer for her. And I'm finishing off by styling it with some like nice beach waves. It just really helps to kind of close the cuticle and to really help the hair shine. And it also helps the dimension to pop and to show and everything. So you can see like the dark and the, caramel kind of mixing in each other and everything. So yeah, a nice beach wave. And this is the final result. So we're all finished. We absolutely loved how this came out. It's so pretty on her. And yeah, I just love this caramel, but it's like an ashier tone. And I'm glad that we brought this lighter color up to the roots and everything, so it really stands out. And you see what I mean by how like the beach wave just really helps these highlights like pop, especially on like subtler colors and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just so pretty and we absolutely love it. And alright guys, thank you so much for watching me do this caramel balayage, and I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. I definitely try to explain as much as possible, so sorry if I talk a lot, but you know, I just wish these videos were around when I was learning, because I feel like there's so much that goes into doing hair, whether it's like color or just like so much stuff that goes into it. So by me like doing more of a podcast type of style and like just explaining every little detail, I really hope it helps you guys. So let me know if it does. Definitely leave any comments or questions or anything in the comment section, or give this video a thumbs up if you like these videos. And definitely don't forget to subscribe to my channel, especially if you want to see more color videos and the occasional haircut video. Definitely subscribe. And like I said, don't forget to follow me on Instagram. It's at Maxine Glynn. I'm going to leave it listed in the description. And I post all of my written out formulas on my Instagram, so it's easier to kind of read and use as a tool. Like if you like how the color came out and you want to use the same, you know, formula and stuff like that, definitely check out my Instagram. And if you guys know of anybody that this video could help, then definitely share it with them. I would really appreciate it. And alright guys, so that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!
So give me your all. I'll take it to Mars. Oh, I'll stick like glue inside your mind. Just watch me breaking.